Is it okay to defy your parents, your friends, not go that corporate route?
If I shoot for five and I hit six, I'm like, great. But if I shoot for 1,000, be at 30, 40, 50, 60, you exit school and you underestimate what you can do in the next decade, you're going to underperform.
So, in order to understand how to quantify success and to understand what it is, you actually have to ponder the big questions that are unanswerable, which is like, what is the meaning of life? For everyone listening, welcome back to the Funding Table. My name is Max Goldberg. I'm a two-time exited founder. I've sold two companies in the past 10 years and have failed several others, believe me. And in the past 6 to 8 months, Michael and I have helped our clients raise over $10 million in funding for their startups. Michael Spitalier, welcome back to the Funding Table.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time. Do you want me to give you a quick rundown of what my background looks like?
Please, it's not like I've heard it before.
So for anyone that hasn't listened before, I started First Time Founder Capital about 2 years ago. This is my fourth company I raised for the previous three in different respects in entirely different industries. Um, First Time Founder Capital brought in by early stage founders, typically pre-seed to Series A, to help them get to the point where they're both investable and investor ready. And then on the other side of the business, been building a network of active investors around 615 at this point. Angels, VCs, family offices, CVCs, accelerators, buyout firms, you name it. Uh, have one-on-one calls, build relationships with each one of them where I dive into exactly what they're looking to invest in, and then share deals with those investors when they're a curated, aligned fit.
We've been having a lot of fun doing it, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a blast.
It sure has. Well, getting into today's topic, um, a very relevant one. We're now in the third week or fourth week of June. Several weeks ago, we've seen the rise of Cluely, Roy Lee, a pretty incredible founder. It's hard to escape Cluely's viral videos and stunts, whether you're on X, whether you're on Instagram and TikTok now. And I think inspired us to talk about potentially a personal subject for the younger viewership here. And we want to talk about what does success look like in your 20s? We have so many young founders. We have 15, 16-year-old in Techstars and Y Combinator doing very big things, growing businesses that, 10, 15 years ago might have not even been an opportunity for someone so young with today's resources, with today's platform, and frankly, today's conviction in young people. So, Michael, just to start off, I'm curious, when you hear success in your 20s, what does that actually mean to you?
Oh man. I mean, I think it's well, first off, I do think it's very prescient, especially since, I live in Boston. I've seen a bunch of the graduation capes walking around the last couple of weeks and people graduating college trying to figure out what the hell to do. Do they go to Goldman? Do they start their own company? Or maybe they don't have the Goldman option. Maybe they don't have the sort of illustrious opportunity placed in front of them. What do they do? Do they start a startup? Do they try and get a barista job and figure out what's next? So I at the very base of this, I just want to say I think that success looks different for everyone. Success for you looks different than success for me, and we're working together. We're in the same sort of uh, microscope of an industry.
Mhm.
So I don't think that this is going to be, overarching. I just want to let that be known. Like I'm not talking to every single 20-year-old, 22-year-old that's about to graduate college, but I will speak from my own past experience. Um, I went to school twice actually. So a little bit of background on me. I went to school for film for a year. Got a bit disenfranchised by or disenchanted by the program, um, and ended up taking the year off. Worked at a rock climbing gym and all that fun stuff. It was fantastic, but um, ended up jumping into school for music. I went to school for music production, music business, all that kind of stuff. Really incredible 2 years, got 2 degrees, all that. But about 6 months before I graduated, when I was starting to think about, what's next, what am I going to do, where am I going to apply, all of that, really arduous and very tense and very difficult couple of months for college graduates,
Yeah.
20-year-old,
Yeah.
even if they didn't go to college. I ended up doing a project with a friend and for one of our classes, and it turned into our first startup. So we ended up scaling that quite a bit, raised some capital, and I started to see the vision sort of combines, sort of come to me, right? What do I want from this life? Of course, there were some inspirations from the classic Instagram, like I'm taking my private jet 2 hours away to enjoy wine sort of scenario. But it really helps shape the idea of what does success look like for me? Do I want to stay in this industry? Is this creating companies from the ground up, something that is enticing, something that I could see myself doing pretty consistently throughout the next, 15, 20, 30,
I
40
I
years.
I do have a question for you. So obviously we've yet to define what success is, and I think we'll get into that next. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. But when you started this first side project when you were in college, I'm assuming that your success or definition of success with that project in a school environment probably changed pretty dramatically as you took it more seriously and really focused on creating a real business. But like, what was your original definition of success with that side project? I think side projects are a really great way to start to see what success might be like for a career and a life, for someone's life. But I'm curious, like, what was your definition of success, or did you even have one when it was
No,
just
I
a
I
project?
I I had one. It was
Get an A.
it was incredibly high. And what I mean by that is, we were talking in my college apartment about, what do we do when this company hits 1 billion in
Yeah,
in
yeah.
revenue? It's I was so young,
We've
right?
all been there, and
Yeah, I
everyone
didn't
watching has been
have
there
the
too.
sort of like
Yeah.
background to understand that is uh you got to start a little small, but also a lot of the successful founders these days had that mentality. We want to hit 1 billion ARR in 12 months, right? So
Mhm.
I guess I wasn't super far off on that, but the success when I was 21 is deeply different than success when I'm now when I'm 32, right? Success at 21 is, we're flying private to, go to Ibiza or, do all these like it's a lot more party focused, and now it's a
Sure.
lot more I want to build things that really matter. I want to build things that help a lot of people, especially founders. I want to, start taking a lot of different tracks in my life that offer me that freedom. And I think that success to me now uh, is similar in the sort of base respect to success to me at 21, which is freedom.
Yeah.
Right? I have a lot of friends right now that are sort of clasped by those quote unquote golden handcuffs at really great jobs, whether that be finance or
Likewise.
et cetera. Um, and they're deeply unhappy. They don't have they're working 80 hours a week still 10 years after graduating. And I'm in a position where now I can take a nice half day. I have the freedom to, really do whatever I want. I can schedule meetings when I want. And this isn't sort of like I'm not trying to
You're the
make my
dream lifestyle, Michael.
yeah, I'm not trying to make myself sound like I've got it all, but um, the freedom, the financial freedom, the time freedom is the ultimate goal, the ultimate sort of success marker for me at this
Yeah.
point.
It's super interesting, and I think you're playing at, and we can kind of transition to what success actually is. And I'm not talking about the dictionary definition of success, but more so, what is success? What's at the core of success? What is it? And I think that I've had time over the past, couple of years, obviously growing up, doing things earlier than most probably thought I should be. By that, I mean building businesses, forgoing a safe route in investment banking, of which, I believe to be my career, or was going to be my career, at least a part of it. It's like at the core of success, there's intrinsic success, which plays more towards like I think the freedom, or at least the whether it be an illusion or real freedom of time that you have, freedom to think about challenging and big things, or on the other hand, it's like the external um, indications or the external factors of success, which might be that flashy job on my resume, the Goldman logo. Like, are you working to be successful? Are you working to fulfill yourself? Are you working to fulfill others and other people's expectations of you? And I think you can have both at the same time. I think it's probably wise to have some internal, intrinsic definitions of success for yourself and also external. But me being in the same boat as you, having thought mostly about what other people would think of me and how my parents, family, friends who are all working in those, great jobs, prestigious roles that I was signed up to do. It's like, is that really success if you're playing the game of life for other people? Or is the ultimate version of success knowing that you're confident in what you are doing, whether or not that translate to material, accumulation, wealth? Like, what actually is success? Is it an internal game or is it an external one?
I think I mean, there are certainly instances of both. But I think at the very end of the day, any sort of advice I would give to any young founder, any 20-year-old that I come across that's asking me for advice is the outside success doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I mean, who doesn't want to be, Jamie Dimon, right? If they're going to school for finance, right? It's that at the outward view, who doesn't want to be Elon Musk? But you have to really understand what your internal success markers look like,
Hmm.
right? I mean, there's going to be people that want to go deep into finance, that want to be, the VP or the CEO or the managing partner of a bank. That's great. If that's your marker, if that's what you want to do, fantastic, go for it. Climb that corporate ladder. And then there are going to be other people that are, looking to design logos and do, some of that sort of like artsy work and then live in the woods and
Yeah.
be off the grid and
Yeah.
it's impossible to put success into a specific metric
Agreed.
because every single person is different, like I mentioned.
And that's the problem I have with just this somewhat recent push in pop culture. Everyone's always been focused on money. This is a capitalist society, the United
Mhm.
States. And there's no question that materialism and wealth drives the vast majority of people. And I think you'd be a fool and lying to yourself or ignorant if you think that that doesn't drive you. There is a drive for wealth at pretty much any level and for every person because
Yeah.
you get to survive. And it just plays a role, unfortunately, in like the respect culture. We have a class system, we have social classes, we have socioeconomic classes. It's impossible to escape those, and any experiment that's tried to remove those has failed miserably, and generally resulted in more of a divide. The question I have is, we try to quantify things to make sense of things. So we have, I think, a relentless focus of young people on their net worth or what their net worth could be, or that playing the my salary is bigger than yours race. It's a never-ending cycle of trying to quantify things and then achieve sometimes and oftentimes the unachievable. There's always going to be someone wealthier than you. There's
I
always
would
going to
love
be
to see
someone
I
with a
would
higher
love
net
to
worth.
I
Yeah.
would love to see the traffic numbers on celebritynetworth.com.
Oh, it's got to be crazy.
Got to
It's
be insane. That
crazy.
has to be one of the highest trafficked websites. It's all people trying to pinpoint their success against others.
Right. The benchmarking, like human
Yeah.
nature, or the keeping up with the Joneses, right? Everyone wants to be doing better and they're constantly focused on what other people are doing. And that's the problem because success, at least in like Western society, has largely been tied to net worth and wealth solely. But the issue with that is, and not to get too philosophical here, so hopefully the viewers appreciate it, but to understand what success means, if you follow the logic that success, okay, is essentially if there's a path to like what the meaning of life is, and what is an optimal life. Success is probably that timeline or that curve to achieve that or not achieve that end state,
Yeah.
right? So in order to understand how to quantify success and to understand what it is, you actually have to ponder the big questions that are unanswerable, which is like, what is the meaning of life? And I think for me, it's very simple. Just the meaning of life is to experience things. And that will look very different for a lot of people. So I feel like for us, a positive benefit we could have just for viewers and anyone watching and just really people that discuss success, but having success be known as this unquantifiable metric. And if you internally believe, if you fundamentally believe that success is to experience things and experience more things over time, success has to then be an intrinsic phenomenon and not one that's just an external benchmark, unlocking a new status, etc.
Yeah.
That
I think
track, or is that
no,
the
it completely tracks. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think that one of it reminded me of back in my 20s when I had my first startup, and then I ended up starting my second startup as we wound that first one down. And I was going to, 6, 7, 8 events a week out in Denver, right? I was 23, 25,
Mhm.
just going to a crazy amount of events, hotel openings. I ended up bringing a friend to a dentist office opening, and ended up meeting an investor over there. Just weird experiences, but also a lot to look back on and a lot to talk about. And I think something sort of from my world that ties this together for me is benchmarking yourself against the seemingly ultra successful. You
Yeah.
know, I have conversations with investors all day, and I talk to anywhere from, $300 million firms to $30 million firms, sometimes, $250 billion firms.
Hmm.
And there's not a whole lot of difference. At least I'm not getting into these sort of deep conversations with them. Certainly, or obviously some of them I am, but, um, from the sort of base level, I've had conversations with founders or operators or even just fund managers that have come in and raised a $10 million fund, and they are the happiest people. I mean, imagine that unlock where it's like all I've wanted to do is just start a fund. It doesn't matter how big it is. I just want to help founders realize their dream.
For
So if
sure.
I could invest in, 10, 15 startups at a small capital level and then work with them to build to that next level, are they less happy or less successful than someone at Sequoia?
Yeah,
I guess it's really up to your sort of internal metrics.
for sure.
But yeah,
And I think that's the issue in a sense of pegging success, especially in your 20s, through a lens of relativity and benchmarking, right? Externally, if you can just view success and appreciate it, and sometimes you have to practice this. And we have this Gen Z, although I'm a member of the generation, this gratitude, this manifestation, it's a lot more like meditation of sorts, but I think it's actually a positive despite it seeming silly. Just like appreciating what you have on an absolute basis because the relative game is never ending. Like
yeah.
hedonistic thinking. And I think just
And I
to,
want to give,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I want to give a little just sort of like practical piece of advice
Yeah,
on this. There are certainly days where I wake up, I'm just not feeling it. I'm sure you've had those days too.
all the
Uh,
time.
a lot of those days seem to happen when we have 5, 10, 15 meetings back to
Yeah,
back to back to back. But the way that I see success on a day to day, especially if you're a founder, this is something that gets overlooked quite often. If you move your startup forward at least one step every day,
yeah,
you're moving more than everyone,
yeah,
right? You are putting yourself in a position to really succeed. So even if you send one really pivotal email or you work for 2 hours versus the full 8 or 9 or 10, and you entirely focus in those 2 hours, I would consider that a success. I've had days where I've sent, a couple emails, I've spent an hour working, and the rest of the time I just sort of relaxed because my mind needed it. And I still consider those days successes.
For sure. That's because the rewards of that micro level of success only start to really accumulate. And frankly, the external validators of what success might be like just start to stack up and compound with the small wins. So I think what's so interesting about like the conversations we have here and, the startup slash fundraising like audience that tunes in is in your 20s. And if you're evaluating, what success might look like, what your career might be like, thinking about a really hard decision that a lot of young folks have to make these days, which is like, well, how big can you swing in your 20s? How big should you swing in your 20s? Is it okay to defy your parents or, go against the gradient with your friends, not go that corporate route with the great logo and try to build something that helps and serves people, your customers? I mean, or is it better to get the experience, the foundational corporate, and I have qualms with this, the corporate experience that may or may not generally not translate to startup America and the startup ecosystem. But like, if we're thinking about success, and if success is truly an internal phenomenon, an internal state or status that can be achieved, do you think that there is such thing as swinging too big in your 20s? Is it okay to go and blow up the things you've been working for in school for so many years and then at the finish line essentially choose not to cross it? Is that success or is it not?
If that's, and this is going to be a sort of non-answer, but if that's what calls you, right? I think that going in, so there are a bunch of different tangents I could go on here, but I think um, if you went to school for English
Yeah.
and you decide, I'm going to start a startup right after school in nuclear, right? It doesn't necessarily coincide. If you're going to put in the work to deeply understand, take 6 months to deeply understand the current landscape, the science, all of that. That's really what you're passionate about. Go for it. I mean, I can't sit here and tell founders and individuals that just graduated college, don't go for it, go the traditional route, because I didn't.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with where I am today. I'm happy that I had all those experiences with those companies. I've, made an immense amount of, friends, colleagues, experiences, all of that.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think it's really it comes down to this one piece of advice that I would give every founder. As much as it has been sort of, I guess for lack of a better word, beautified. I don't
Hmm.
know if that's actually a word, but um, being a startup founder is not easy.
To hell every day, pretty much.
It's brutal,
Yeah.
right? It's not just waking up every day and like no shame here, but it's not waking up every day and going to Joanne's Fabrics
Hmm.
and working there, right? It's incredibly intense. You have to learn something new every single day. You're dealing with a bunch of people you have to hire, you have to raise, you have to, it's not as much as it's become so public and beautiful, like this
Yeah.
founder, he's 22 and he just raised a bunch of money and now he bought this beautiful loft in New York and he has a Maserati and all of that. He flew private or he flew a helicopter to work yesterday, all of that. It's all fun and games when you
Yep.
think about it like that, but when it comes down to the grit of it, if you don't think that you have that grit, if you're not willing to wake up every day and grind, as much as everyone says, they startup founders should have work-life balance in the beginning, there is none.
No,
So
no,
if you're fine with that, fantastic. Figure out your passion, figure out what you're going to build and go
sure.
for it.
And the beautiful thing, and in all sense of what you said, it's 100% true. The difference between going to work at Joanne's Fabrics or going to work at Morgan Stanley and doing your own thing is that in the first two contexts, success and your objectives, your thresholds of success are set for you. It is very hard, immensely hard to set success metrics for your own startup for yourself. It's so much easier to delegate that stress and that unbelievable like unbelievably complex task to like define what success looks like That's why so many investors, there's will be there never will be consensus. We have public markets, essentially people betting on, there's buyers and sellers on essentially like, are these metrics good or not? That's really what the sales of stock, and that's the whole foundation of the stock market, right? In any market. It's like, do we agree that this business is worth what it's saying it is, or could this business be more successful in the future? Is it less? Because everyone disagrees on what success looks like. So I
Yeah.
think the challenge and also the benefit of at a young age trying to figure out what success looks like for your day-to-day schedule. Like, is it successful if I'm on 20 sales calls? Or is it more successful if I have someone take those for me? Is it more successful if I work on making the product better? Or is it more successful to focus on whatever the case it might be, right? Coming up with definitions of success is very hard. And getting to experience it like I have starting at a very young age, you have at a young age, is a really powerful exercise and like thing that's benefited me, I think, tremendously. So now when I view relationships, I feel like I have a bit more of a disciplined worldview of like what am I optimally going to get out of this relationship? Like what is realistic? What is success? Because I felt what success and a lack of success looks and feels like, and that wasn't something that someone had to create for me. I got to create it for myself. Um,
Um,
I'm curious because we're talking about, fundraising and success in your 20s. I think a lot of first-time founders, especially, but of course, all sorts of business owners have to deal with like, how do I divvy up equity? So we have a thing, we have percentages of ownership. Like in your 20s, should I be optimizing for like getting equity in things? Should I be focused on building equity in assets, building equity in things I work on? Or should I be more focused on cash and kind of deferring that long-term play till later? I know it might sound obvious on the surface that, like, yeah, you'd probably want equity in things at a younger age, but you also forego a lot of other benefits that an employee, a W-2 would be entitled to. I'm curious, like, if you're in your 20s again, are you trying to build equity in various things that you're working on? Are you trying to get involved with other people? Or what? How do you think about that?
That's a really good question. My immediate gut instinct, just because this is what I'm doing right now, is get as much equity as possible.
Yeah.
You want to diversify that portfolio. You don't have the money to, spend on a whole lot of like public market trading, and that obviously takes time to be intelligent at. Um, I think of the sort of ideal medium there, if you're not a if you're not the type that wants to not clock out and have the grit to start a company, go for a full-time job and start utilizing the work that you do there to position yourself as someone that knows what they're doing, and then start consulting early stage
Yeah.
companies.
But Michael, so I'm an employee. I'm going to work at Apple and they're giving me a stock plan. So I do have equity
Oh,
in
okay.
Apple. Why is your equity different if you built it yourself versus mine? Mine already has more value.
It does, but you also have to think about the diversification of it, right? So Apple is at what, 2 trillion or what have you. The growth opportunity there is not going to be as substantial as you getting equity in a pre-seed company that ends up turning into Apple, or that ends up turning into like a 1/50th of Apple,
That's
right? If
interesting.
you're an early advisor in a company at the pre-seed level and they end up raising a Series B or a Series C and they sell, then you get, an
Yeah.
immediate buyout there.
It's interesting. You thought of it from the external quantitative version of success and what that equity would mean. I thought about it more of from the perspective of I made this thing. So if I'm given equity in Apple or I buy the stock, you can't make any sort of argument that that equity ownership is going to feel anywhere as good versus like Steve Jobs, who could have said, I built that thing. Which do you think actually mattered more to him at the end of his life? Was
Built
it
that thing, for
was it
sure.
the Apple's worth trillions of dollars, or is it that I built this thing and I own it and I impacted millions of people? And like that
Only the
is
latter.
an internal framework to think about success. So
Intriguing.
can you really even value that sense of like pride and ownership that you have? I think that's success. And that's why I think people in their 20s, whether they have a liquidity event or make a ton of money or not, being able to conceive something like a child, which is how every founder views their business, this is a part of you. It is you,
Yeah.
right? To an extent. And like that not only generally consists a huge part of your personality and character, but like that's like a sole part of your identity. So like I feel that not as many people, more people now have that feeling of like this is what it feels like to own something that you created out of thin air. That is a priceless feeling for me. So no matter what happens for me, getting to experience that feeling has been if I lived life without feeling that, I'm imagining my life would be very different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You're completely right. It's I can't put into words the feeling.
Yeah, you can't. It's ineffable. I'm curious,
Yeah.
one more question before we wrap, but in terms of building things in your 20s, working on projects, starting a fund, doing whatever the hell it is, right? Do you think that, and I'm not asking if it's right or wrong, but do you think it's advantageous as a 20-year-old to underestimate or overestimate what you can do in your 20s? So if you started at 20, let's just say, and you had 10 years till 30. Obviously, life doesn't stop at 30. You're still young, but right. Um, you have that 10 years. Do you think it's better to underestimate or overestimate what will happen in that 10 years? And I'm curious why you think what you think.
Overestimate
Why?
any day of the week.
Why?
I mean, it's the old I don't have the quote off the top of my head, but it's that old Elon quote, right? You underestimate and overestimate. We'll have to, do you know it?
Yeah, I think I've heard it's Bill Gates. I've heard it's Warren Buffett. I think that's just it's been
Anyone.
recycled. But people tend to overestimate what they can do in a year or 3 years, and underestimate what they can do in seven or a decade. Is generally
Yeah,
how.
so I mean, the way that I think about this is, if you come in and you underestimate what you can do, you're going to underperform. If you come in and you overestimate, if I come in and I have this idea of, I'm gonna help a thousand founders, get to the point where they're investable and investor ready, and then I'm gonna help introduce them to, 10,000 investors, right? If I come in and do that versus I'm gonna help, five founders this year, um, and I'm gonna introduce them to investors that are gonna close their round. Yes, of course, that's fantastic. I'm not gonna be upset by that. But if I shoot for five and I hit six, I'm like, great.
Totally.
That's just like a little bonus. That's a bow on top of it. But if I shoot for 1,000, I'm going for quantity,
Yep.
but I'm also, at the very core of my business and myself, I'm not going to forego quality just to hit that number, but I'm still going to be at, 30, 40, 50,
For
60.
sure.
If you come in and you exit school and you underestimate what you can do in the next decade, you're going to
A
underperform versus
hundred percent. A hundred
could do
percent of the time.
a
Right.
100% of the time.
Right. And that's the whole thing. I approach the gym, going to the gym in the same way. It's like a lot of people say, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, or I'm going to go to the gym 2 times a week. I've always sat here and say, I'm going to go every day. And
Yeah.
if I miss a day or two, which I do all the time, I'm going double the amount of time that if I had to
Yeah.
cap myself at 2 or 3, right, on average. So that plays to really, I think, probably the best takeaway here is like your mindset matters a lot. So it's understanding yourself, understanding what success is, but knowing that if you artificially, because it is artificially limit yourself, right, you are going to underperform. You are going to limit your true potential. Whereas if you index higher and you don't achieve it, in 9.99, probably 10 out of 10 cases, even if you fall short of that goal, you've exceeded where you would have been if you set a smaller definition of success. So I completely agree with
Well,
about humility.
it's like going into an investor call when you're a startup and
Yep.
thinking,
I'm not gonna
they're
raise.
yeah, I'm not going to raise their fund is not going to be interested in me.
Yep.
But I still could have like a decent conversation versus I'm going to get the check on this call. they are going to write the check 15 minutes in. Now you're going to come in, you're going to be, you're going to be cocky, you're going to be feeling good versus a sort of like meek, I'm going to sit in the
Yeah,
corner and like I'm going to try and answer your questions the best I can. That's never going to win.
for
The
sure.
cocky person is always going to win. And if you get a second meeting, then, it's three-quarters of the way there
100%.
versus the investor saying, "Hey, like it's good to meet you. I hope this didn't like deter you from continuing. Like you look a little bit nervous and scared. It's the mindset of it all is entirely imperative when you go into an investor pitch. So I think that ties it sort of back to
Sure.
what we typically talk about.
In this life, if you don't, you have to believe in yourself before and after anyone else does. If you don't believe in yourself, you're gonna have a very hard time getting other people to believe. And in the case of VCs, they can smell it. They
Oh
can
yeah.
smell that lack of conviction in yourself. Well, Michael, super interesting conversation. I know we got a little philosophical here for a moment. If you like that, let us know below. We're happy to dive more into philosophy. I love philosophy. Um, but some really tough questions posed here. I think some pretty good opinions and value for people watching. If you got any sort of value from this, or you have any questions, have any topics you'd like Michael and I to cover in a future episode, we're releasing these videos weekly. And if we said we were doing it monthly, we would be far short of where we are, even if we missed one of our weekly episodes, in the spirit of the lesson we learned here. So, if you could, please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps us so much reach other founders, and hopefully inspire some people to do great things. As always, I'm posting daily on TikTok and Instagram. Max J Goldberg is my handle. Michael also just created his first Instagram post as of a day ago, so super happy that you made the jump. I believe the account is FTFC Mike.
Mike FTFC
Mike
at Mike
FTFC. Okay.
FTFC.
MikeFTFC. So
Yes.
go shoot us a follow there. We put out daily content. And until next time, Michael, good talking with you, man.
Appreciate it.